I was sick with toxic mold. It was, like I've talked about before on here, an all-encompassing experience. It was debilitating. And there were many, many times where I truly believed that there was no escape and there was no way to get out. It was, in my mind, a death sentence. And when I would go into the groups to try to find help and new ways of healing, it was oftentimes very bleak in those groups. I would sometimes read the comment sections, and people would be going back and forth. Many people would say, "I don't believe you ever heal," and just these quite terrible stories from different people talking about how they have been trying to escape it for years, and when they moved out of one place, they found another place, and that place had it, and it just was this circulating, never-ending escape for those people. And it's a very scary thought when you are going through toxic mold, or really any sort of illness, chronic illness, whatever it is. That thought of maybe I'll never heal, it's debilitating. And there was a good chunk of time where I thought that might be the case. And so I would spend just some time living in that, and it just sent me down a spiral, because at that point everything feels quite hopeless, right? When you have that thought, that sort of, I guess, end of the road, like this is it for me sort of moment. It's really quite debilitating to think about. And there became a point where I really just couldn't take existing in that any longer, because it felt suffocating, just living and existing in that headspace. And so, without any real proof, it started out without any real proof, just me sort of, I guess, getting fed up of feeling that way and spiraling down and all of that. I guess there became a point where I was just sort of like, well, I guess I should just give it a chance. Maybe just give myself some hope, tell myself that there is a way out of it. That there might be a way out of it. At least it'll help keep me going, And I think that kind of snowballed, just that little crack of possibility, that little glimmer of hope that kind of opened the door in a way for me. And it led me down this sort of path. And I don't know if I was searching for it or if videos and information was coming to me. But either way, I came across a lot of videos and information about sort of this idea of removing the word can't from your vocabulary, especially I can't, and being very also aware of the words that you say after I or I am. And that just sort of stuck with me a little bit. It was ruminating in my mind, although I didn't necessarily believe it, and I felt very stuck. And I prayed a lot during this time and just sort of let that sort of sink into my spirit. And I would try to spend a lot of time, any time that I felt mentally clear enough to really think about these things and go back and forth about, like, well, what are the pros and cons of, the con is I just spiral and I just sit in that. Or the pro, I guess, is just, or if I go with this option, I guess it's, giving myself, at worst, false hope, at best, freedom, potentially. The odds looked better over here. And so, for a while, it felt like I was being a little phony to myself and just trying to pep myself up and removing the phrase "I can't" and replacing it with "I won't," which oftentimes felt like an attack on my soul a little bit, on my spirit a little bit, especially when I'm thinking of it in terms of "I can't heal," that sentence, versus "I won't heal." It almost feels like it's a admission of my own inabilities, which isn't the case, but it felt that way. And over time, though, I started to change my vocabulary a little bit, and then tried to watch videos of people doing things that I maybe one day would like to do, and try to get out of that headspace of "that'll never be me," and just sort of watch it as in this like amazement sort of mindset, which was hard because obviously it felt like I was so stuck, and these people are able to do all of these amazing things. But in a way, it kind of helped me. It reminded me that life is still being lived out there, and that people are accomplishing things. And if people are accomplishing things, I too one day could potentially accomplish things like this, especially since I was trying to keep in my head this sort of idea of removing "I can't," and so it caused me to look at these videos of people doing things that I one day might want to do with a different lens. And eventually my encouragement built up a little bit, and I started to research more and more with more ambition in my heart, because I never stopped really researching. Of course, there were many days where I was so completely brain fogged that I didn't research anything, months perhaps. But I always had that researching spirit within me, because I ultimately knew that was my only hope, is to research on my own how to heal. But my energy about it had changed. My mood about it had changed. My ambition towards it had changed. And so I started to build up this ambition towards researching just a little bit. And that helped me a great deal, because then I started to see possibilities and people talking about how they have healed, and exposing myself to a lot of articles and information and videos about people who have healed, or who are trying these things to heal. And it started to break down this idea that things are hopeless, and build up this idea that maybe there's hope in this. Maybe there is an out for me. And as time went on, I think removing those negative words allowed my mind to be opened to other possibilities. that it wasn't open to before. And even though it did take still quite a long time, the progress was still there. It did lead me to detoxing while I was in toxic mold, like finding out a good way to detox. Although it didn't actually heal me during that time, it just sort of made it so the mold toxicity wasn't getting worse. It made me sort of at this plateau state, which was still huge. And then finding, we did a colon cleanse, and that boosted us a little bit more. And see, if my mind hadn't been opened, if my mind hadn't removed the I can't, if my mind hadn't removed these negative phrases, I don't think my mind would have been opened or would have seen these things. And then eventually from there, even though it did take still a while, we were able to move and sell that house and fix things up, enough, get rid of the mold in there. And it eventually saved me. It eventually got me out of there, which was my dream the entire time I was in there. I really couldn't even fathom a world in which I had gotten out, and here I am today, out of it for 2 years. Like, it's incredible. I think over 2 years, if I'm really thinking about it. Maybe almost 3 years if I'm really thinking about it, which is incredible. And this wouldn't have happened. I truly believe that this wouldn't have happened if I would have stayed in that state of I can't. Something would have happened, but I don't think I would have escaped toxic mold. And then from there, praying throughout that time led me to getting every single thing that I prayed for, which maybe I'll talk about in another video, but miracles, like straight up insane, wild miracles had happened that were just released to me. And had I not removed the phrase I can't from my vocabulary, I would have never asked for more. I would have never sought out more. I would have never had hope for more. I would have stunted myself. So I'm very, very fortunate. Very fortunate that those articles and those videos were presented before me, so I could regain hope during that time. And now, in my everyday life, I do try my best to remove the phrase I can't from my vocabulary. Because you never know what can happen. You never know the possibilities that can happen.